Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads.
Hey, how's it going out there, everybody? Welcome to the Drum Shuffle. Jamie Eads joining you as I do each and every week. This is episode 106. I hope everybody has had a fantastic summer. Not that it's not still summer, but as you all are very well aware, I took a few weeks off to spend some time with my daughter before we got her back down to North Carolina for ballet school. So I really enjoyed unplugging just a little bit, and I hope that you guys didn't forget all about us. But during the time that I took off, I did a ton of great interviews. We've got a ton of great content coming up for you over the next several weeks, and I'll be with you every single week all the way up to Thanksgiving is my plan as of right now. When we left off back in late June, early July, we were hoping that COVID would end and we could get back to some live music. And as you know, that has not happened as of yet, but we're holding out hope. The good news is you can pretty much get any drummer you want on the telephone right now. So I've been busy getting some great interviews together for all of you to listen in on. Today is going to be no exception to that. I am going to talk to one of the hottest young female jazz stars in all of music. Miss Shirazette Tinnin will be joining me right after this message from our sponsor, Los Cabos Drumsticks. The best kept secret for drummers is finally out. Los Cabos Drumsticks may look like the sticks you grew up with, but these are not your father's drumsticks. Los Cabos Drumsticks is Canada's #1 drumstick brand, and they are coming to a retailer near you. With operations in over 28 countries worldwide, thousands of drummers have already discovered the Los Cabos difference. Using FSC certified wood from Canada and the US, Los Cabos make the finest quality drumsticks, percussion tools, and accessories on the market. The best news, Los Cabos Drumsticks offers you a ton of choice. They have 22 individual drumstick models and 14 percussion tools, many of which are available in 3 different wood types: maple, white hickory, and red hickory. Red hickory comes from the center or heart of the hickory tree and has been independently proven to be both stronger and more elastic than white hickory without adding a lot of weight. While most drumstick manufacturers have shunned red hickory, Los Cabos Drumsticks has embraced it, becoming the only established stick brand in the world to offer a full line of red hickory drumsticks. To learn more about Los Cabos Drumsticks, visit them online at loscabosdrumsticks.com. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and don't forget to ask for Los Cabos Drumsticks at your favorite retailer. Dare to be different. Join the Red Hickory Revolution with Los Cabos Drumsticks. All right, guys and girls, as I mentioned before the break there, we are about to be joined by Shirazette Tinnin, just one of the upcoming stars in the world of jazz. She also happens to be just a phenomenal human being. So I think you'll get a lot out of this interview. And if you're not familiar with Shirazette, get hip quick. This young lady can absolutely smoke a drum set. I promise you that. We talk a little bit about her album, and this interview was conducted way back, I think at the end of June, first part of July. And in the interim, her record has come out. It's called Sonic Wallpaper Volume 1, The Cards That Life Can Deal. And she talks about the story of how she kind of came up with this. And it's a little bit on the, avant-garde side of jazz, dare I say. but it is absolutely wonderful. And it is a mix of great jazz playing. You have some hip hop influences in there, some poetry influences in there. It's just a really cool record that I think everybody should run out and pick up. Again, it's called Sonic Wallpaper Volume 1, The Cards That Life Can Deal, released right under her own name, Shirazette Tinnin. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this, and Shirazette is a wonderful teacher, and all of her contact information is in the end of this interview if anybody wants to reach out to her. So without further ado, help me welcome to the Drum Shuffle, Shirazette Tinnin. Hey, good morning, Shirazette. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm very well. I'm very well, considering the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we've had so many folks on and, talking about, just COVID and all the weirdness that's going on in the country right now. And it has really put the music industry on its knees. There's no live playing anywhere right now at the time of recording. And I know that's really tough for everybody, but, somebody like you that, just put out a great new solo record. It's hard to get out and promote that stuff. I mean, how are you adapting to it?
Oh, wow. That's such a great question. How am I adapting? Well, I was fortunate to be allowed to bring my rhythm section, my piano player, my bassist, to where I lived when I'm in New York. And fortunately, it has a stage.
Nice.
Because I live in a church when I'm here in New York, and so I coordinated for them to come up, and we did the whole social distancing thing, and we rehearsed and did some recording, and then we did my presentation of the album around, I think it was 7:30 p.m. As a release promo for it, and I have the video. Other promotion I'm doing is just everything social online. So yeah. I'm just on Instagram and Facebook talking about it, and I also have a newsletter that I write. So I'm sending it out by email every way possible that I can. And my partner is also a musician, so she sang the portion that would usually be for my other vocalist, and that's how I was able to pull it off. So I was blessed.
Well, yeah, for sure. And, and we'll talk about the record because it really is a good listen, and I'm not typically a jazzer. I love jazz music, but it's not what I personally play. But your record has this really cool, almost fusion-y, pop jazz vibe to it. And it's hard to explain, but there's a lot of influences in there. But if we can, I want to kind of rewind and talk about your background a little bit, because I think it's really cool. Tell us all, where you grew up and how you got into drumming to begin with.
Okay. So I grew up, born and raised in North Carolina in a little small town called Pleasant Grove. It's right outside. And I started loving music at a very young age, especially because my parents and my grandparents were influential with that. My mom was a trombonist, and she actually marched for the 1 year that she attended A&T State University, and she was a homecoming queen, which is crazy.
That's awesome.
My dad was a vocalist. And he had a brothers, and they actually did a lot of singing around Burlington, and they were supposed to open up for Sam Cooke.
Oh, nice.
He told me the story. Yeah, and one of his brothers decided not to show up because he was like, oh, he never showed, and we didn't have the harmony, and it was crazy. We didn't get to open up for him because we weren't going to sound good. I was like, oh, wow, that's insane. And so that never popped off, unfortunately, to fame. But I grew up in church hearing my parents sing, and they would travel with the churches, and the church that I went to was called Sweet Gum Baptist Church. And so I was a super little, super young when I got baptized, but didn't have a drum set, down in the organ. So everything was super duper folkloric, like
yeah,
the churches, and they used basically, their body to make the percussion. It was later on that they got drums. About the time that happened, we didn't attend the church anymore. And moving forward, I was about 4 years old when I saw Sheila E. on what was MTV.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw her playing and throwing up her sticks, and they glowed in the dark. She spun around and caught them, and I told my parents, like, that is what I want to play. I want to play drums. And they looked at me like, okay. And and they got me this little banged-up drum set from somewhere. It didn't last very long because my parents, we didn't really have a lot of money. So the real turn around in my life for music came when the feeder schools, when you're in elementary, my director was from Woodlawn Middle School, which is out in Mebane, and he was also the band director for the high school, which is Eastern Alamance. So he came and visited Pleasant Grove Elementary when I was a fourth grader. And he had this jazz band. The drummer in the band, I found out later, was Greg Harvey, who became my drum instructor there on in high school. They came through, performed for us, and they were telling us about their band program. And all of my peers in school with me said, hey, isn't that what you want to do? Don't you want to play drums? I was like, yeah, it is, blah, 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 blah. And and so lo and behold, when I got to middle school, I joined the band, and I played clarinet for 2 weeks, which was the band agreement. And then after 2 weeks, I got put in the back. I was like, hey, it's 2 weeks, and I got to go to the back so I could be in the percussion section. He laughed, and he said, okay, all right, go back there. And while I was developing as a musician, I was also actually developing as an athlete, and I started playing mite and midget league basketball before I got to middle school. I was 9 years old when I started doing that. And my mom and that program with so, and they did because my asthma was so bad that they were trying to help me grow out of it. And it actually worked. So when I got into the band program in sixth grade, after sixth grade, you can play sports in seventh grade on up. So I tried out for the basketball team. So I was in band and basketball, and that was the cycle for me from middle school. And when I got to high school, I started doing band camp with the drum line. We had our own band camp that we would do before the rest. So it would be drum line all week 4, and I started marching snare drum actually in middle school.
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was, my band director was pretty slick with it. He started developing us as marching band students and not just concert band students and not just ensemble students. I was concert band and jazz ensemble, and I was marching in 7th grade, but I was in concert band and jazz ensemble in 6th grade. It was a pretty dope program. I didn't fortunate until after I relocated. Noticed other programs didn't have that type of system like programs in North Carolina. But anyway, so I started marching snare drum for the parades and stuff in 7th grade. And by the time I got to 9th grade, I was the first female drum captain. And I co-captained with another drummer named Alan Fogelman. And so it was me, him, and there's another drummer who ended up, where did he, I can't remember where he went. But anyway, so we became the main drum line, and Michelle Thompson was on bass drum, and she was also playing basketball with me in high school. And so we became the top drum line in the 1A to 2A division for Alamance County. And that's when I started learning about all county jazz ensemble. I don't know if are you familiar with all county jazz ensemble?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I started trying out for that, for all county band and all county jazz ensemble, and I continued to excel in it, and I started winning awards for that. And I met this drummer from Western Alamance. He was the band director. His name was Mr. Eddie Harris. And I remembered him because he looked at me with this curiosity, and he gave me his sticks, and he said, keep playing. And it was the first time that I actually had to sight read new music. So I was like, oh, okay, I gotta work on my sight reading and blah, blah, blah. And then I did all county again the following year, and that's how I made my connection with Appalachian State University, because Dr. Todd Wright is still at Appalachian, and during that time he was the all county jazz director my second year doing all county, and he had this chart, this big band chart, and it was crazy because I had a solo at the beginning with triplets. It was like, and I couldn't read triplets yet. So I was like, wait, what is this? And so he had another drummer show it to me, and he played it, and I got it just like that. So my ears are very, very strong. And so the cycle for me through high school was basketball, concert band, jazz ensemble, track. Summers would be basketball camp, and then band camp. And I did that constant cycle. I just kept playing until I graduated. And by the time I graduated, I had the opportunity to apply to Appalachian. And I only applied to 2 schools, Appalachian State University and A&T State University. And I never heard anything back from A&T State University. And my band director had attended Appalachian State University when it was a teaching school before it even became a university. And he said, I still have contacts there. So not only was he connected to Mr. Todd Wright, but he also was connected to the marching band director. And so I think it was my junior year in high school that the marching band was going to competitions, and the drum line would beat out 4A drum lines. Even if our horn section wouldn't win superior, the drum line was winning superior. And I thought that was insane, that, we were just small drum line and we were kicking butt and beating these really big drum lines that had all these double-headed premier percussion instruments. And, but I owe that a lot to our drum tech, who was Greg Harvey, because without him, I wouldn't have became the first drum captain, and he actually put me on quads. So I marched quads from 9th grade through high school, played drum set in the big band, and I played concert percussion in the concert band. And that was my development, and I didn't realize how strong of a player that was going to make me and make other opportunities for me later on. I just loved to play. So when I got to Appalachian, because yes, they accepted me, I had a rude awakening because I didn't play mallet percussion.
Oh, well, yeah. But I mean, but having all that drumline experience all through middle school, all through high school, I think, I did not come up in that path, but drummers that do come up through marching and ensembles and, jazz band and things like that, they just have such a ability to, sight read, obviously, and the rudiments are so strong. It's impressive. It really
Right.
is. So, Appalachian State is obviously, a wonderful school up there in Boone, North Carolina. And I know you
Right.
did all 4 years there, and then you went on and got a master's degree from Northern Illinois. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you are a well-educated percussionist. In other words, when you
Yeah.
when you get those advanced degrees, and I think your degree from Northern Illinois includes jazz pedagogy, correct?
Yes, it does. It does.
Okay. So, but let me ask you this, and this is just kind of a curiosity, as a young kid in North Carolina, you said you grew up in church and that was kind of your first, exposure to drumming and things like that. And then obviously, through middle school and high school, you're doing drum lines and jazz band and all that. What was the draw to jazz? Were your parents into jazz music as well? I mean, or is that just a natural progression?
It has to do with my mom and my dad, the music that they played in the house. And it varied. It varied from not just jazz music, but also the Chitlin circuit music, like James Brown.
Sure.
And my mom used to listen to this artist from Chicago. He wasn't from Chicago originally, but oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to remember his name later. But she played a lot of variations of music in the house. My dad mainly just listened to gospel artists like Canton Spirituals. He listened to people like that.
Sure.
But my mother, she was very diverse. She listened to everything. And this band from Chicago, she used to go see the group when they would tour and come back to North Carolina. And so, I grew up in the era where you could buy 10 CDs for 10 cents.
Oh, sure. Yeah. BMG and Columbia House and all that. Oh,
exactly.
Yeah.
So she would buy me all this music. And within the things that she would buy, big band music would be part of that experience. And so I actually started listening to big band in middle school because of playing it. And I actually would ask her to purchase me Duke Ellington and Count Basie. And I would listen to that. I would listen to hip hop because, I grew up in the era of when hip hop was just becoming more and more out there. And so my brothers also were a big part of that influence too, because they're 10, 9, and 8 years older than me. So when I was little, I would see them listen to artists like Janet Jackson and Pet Shop Boys and then Led Zeppelin and the Police. So I was just influenced by my parents and my siblings, and I remember putting a cassette tape in the radio, and I watched them do it. I was only about 5 or 6, and they would record music off the radio by putting tissue in the cassette tape. So I would listen to the radio, and as soon as a song would come on that I wanted to hear over and over, I hit the record button. So those were the main reasons why I really love jazz and all different styles of music,
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's awesome. To have such a diverse, set of influences as a drummer. And I think some of that, shows through in the new record, and as I said early on, I can't hardly put it into words, and certainly this isn't about me, but when I listened through, I was like, well, there's definitely a jazz influence. I could hear some of the, pop or hip hop influence in there. It's a really cool fusion of a lot of different styles. Was that what you were going for when you were composing this, or is it just what came out?
That's a great question. So, yes, I wanted to create something based off of my own personal experiences, mainly because when I did my first album, I kind of forced myself to try to make it completely straight ahead. And looking back on that type of writing that I did, I felt as though I wasn't as successful as I wanted to be because I kind of like forced it. So a lot of people like the first album, but I don't. But with this third album, actually, it was coming mainly from an emotional experience because I've discovered the more that I write and have become comfortable with it, I write from a emotional experience standpoint. And believe it or not, a lot of times melody or bass parts come first. The rhythmic stuff, even though it's what's natural for me, comes after the fact. So I just basically tried to not force it and be natural and accept whatever came out. And because of my Afro-Peruvian experiences that I've had, I got this opportunity to play an Afro-Peruvian ensemble about over 10 years ago, actually over 11 years ago. And I didn't realize that experience was going to become a foundational part of my playing, but because I played in an Afro-Peruvian ensemble, I've studied in Peru to learn the rhythms and play them on cajon. And I've also played with a African artist named Africanita and been in her band and recorded with her that a lot of pure African rhythms are also influential in my playing. So there's a lot of Latin, a lot of African, and a lot of swing on top of, me playing pocket and listening to, going back 1 second, the artist is Tyrone Davis. So I grew up listening to a lot of R&B from Tyrone Davis because of my mom. So a lot of that is part of my foundation as well. So that's why this album sounds the way it does, because I feel as though I'm more mature as a composer and as a band leader, and I knew exactly what I wanted to say this time. So that's what you hear. You hear that blending coming from that. And I'm a Janet Jackson fanatic, so I've listened to every Janet Jackson song ever. I'm a huge Flight Time, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis, inspired by all of that. So that 90s R&B, that 80s and 90s hip hop, you hear and you feel all of that coming through.
Yeah, well, and you definitely do. And, as I listen through, you've got several, interludes, throughout the record, which I think kind of ties it all together, which is really cool. But, for those that haven't figured out what we're talking about yet, the album is called Sonic Wallpaper Volume 1. And it is released under your name, Shirazette Tinnin. And it's a really good record. It probably wouldn't be something that would have been on my radar had I not had you on the show, because it's different for me. It's not really in my lane, so to speak. But when I listened to through the album, I could really see what you were going for here. And it really is a great work. I mean, it really is. And I think everybody should give it a listen, because it's got a lot of really cool stuff in there. And your drumming is spot on. For people that love, good drumming, this is a record for them for sure. Talk to me a little bit about the process of getting the record together. Where did you record it?
Okay. So the process actually started in 2016. I started writing it as a healing project to just help me digest the fact that my family, we were trying to accept the fact that my father, my mom's husband of 49 years, may not survive cancer. And so the first song on the album, Cards That Life Can Deal, when I say we, I'm talking about my friend Shayna Small. During the process, I was trying to write, a creative visualization idea where it's like, all right, let me write about what I want to happen instead of what I don't want to happen. So Cards That Life Can Deal was the first song that I started writing, and we began the recording process, believe it or not, in my apartment. So
nice.
We didn't do the studio until maybe another year after. So Cards That Life Can Deal was first, and then I started, thinking about the perspective of my mother and what she's having to deal with, seeing her husband, go from able-bodied to not being able to clothe himself and eat on his own. So Drowning came next, and then there started becoming this conflict between me and my siblings, especially one in particular, and I started trying to understand what he was dealing with, and I kept questioning, like, why are you behaving this way? So I actually wrote most of the tunes on my own, or I would get somebody else to listen to the lyrics that I had written and, help me to write it in a way that a vocalist could understand it. Because I was just writing as in a diary form, the lyrics.
Yeah.
and I just used my computer and GarageBand because I couldn't always get together with my band, nor could I really afford it because, I was going back and forth between New York and North Carolina to relieve my mother of the stress of my father having to need 24-hour home care. So financially, I was like, all right, I can do this with just my laptop and my Akai MPC keyboard, and I'll sing all the melodies. Then I'll have people that I trust that are vocalists to check out the melodies and give me feedback on how I can make it better. And so that was part of the process. And then I started rehearsing my rhythm section and whatever grooves that I had came up with, with the orchestrations that I had, I would give them a basic foundation, and then they would just make it better. Because, I play a little bass. I don't play any horns. I play enough piano to compose, but those are not my primary instruments. So I would let them build upon my skeleton idea. And from that standpoint, and all of this happened within a year and a half, I started something called living room sessions, where I actually performed in my living room because, being an artist that's a side man, most of the time venues don't want to, book a drummer.
Yeah. I know all about it.
With their own band. It's like, yo, what's up with that? Come on. We had Max Rhodes, Tony Williams, but anyway, so that was the process for over a year and a half. And then, after my dad passed away 9 months later, I continued to write other music, and Past Tense became another track because I was trying to figure out how to move on and how to explain to others what it's like to have a dad that you thought was going to beat cancer and he didn't beat it, and how it hurts to be so close to your parents and you can't see them anymore. So all those songs were derived from that experience. And then the interludes came about because my siblings had a hard time in North Carolina. And it wasn't as difficult for me as it was for them, but they're black men in North Carolina. And unfortunately, I didn't know that there was going to be new civil rights movement going on, but it makes sense because, there are stories that I have about being, in band in high school and being around people that I kind of felt were racist, but I wasn't sure, but they would act certain kind of ways, and then getting to Appalachian and people yelling the word nigger and dyke at me. So I wrote those interludes to basically defuse what my siblings went through, and what I experienced growing up in the South, and not just the South, just being a female drummer and having conflict and people looking at you different because you play an instrument that they think is supposed to be only from a masculine standpoint. I'm like, okay, you're very ignorant, but all right.
Yeah. Well, and not to interrupt, but I just want to go on the record and say this right now. We try on this show to have as many artists, whether they're male, female, that it makes no difference. And it does, and it doesn't matter if you're, African American, Cuban, Latino. It does not matter to me. You're either a great musician or you're not. It's exactly. It's that simple. And as someone who has grown up as a white male, I can't understand some of those struggles that other people have. You know what I mean? Because I haven't had those same struggles. But, here's what I want to say about you. And you didn't come on here to go through your resume, obviously. But if anybody has any doubt about Shirazette, she was the house drummer for the Meredith Vieira show on NBC. You have played with Alicia Keys. You have studied with Cindy Blackman Santana. You're no joke. I mean, you've played at the Apollo Theater. You've played at Carnegie. You have taught. You have studied with Terry Lynn Carrington. You have multiple endorsements, Sabian Canopus, Vic Firth, International Association of Jazz Educators. Look, you've got a resume that speaks for itself. So let me say, on behalf of all drummers, I'm sorry you had to go through that, because it's total bullshit. It's total bullshit, because you are a certified stone cold badass drummer. So let's get that out of the way. Now, I'm sorry that I interrupted, but
it's cool.
Right now in this country, we have something going on, and I think people are finally just sick and tired of it, whether it's racism, sexism, sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. You love who you love. You were born who you were born. Let's get past all these labels, So I just wanted to say that I think people are finally sick and tired of the labels, and what you're doing is incredible work. So thank you.
You're very welcome. I appreciate that. Yeah. So that's how the process began. Basically in my home, in my little tiny laptop. And before we went into an actual studio, I took my R24 track recorder to Maryland with me to finish the demo track with Shayna Small, who sings Cards That Life Can Deal. And it's so funny because during that time that my dad was sick, I would drive down to North Carolina, and I left my bag, my engineering bag, with all my gear in my Jeep. I went to go pick up my mom and take her over to the little rehabilitation home where my dad was. And believe it or not, within that 10 minutes of going in the house to get my mom and coming back out, and I usually do this in North Carolina, I don't lock my door. I came out, and I didn't realize until about 3 or 4 hours later, it was about 1 a.m, And I forgot to mention this, but I was driving Uber to recoup some of the money that I would spend going back and forth and helping my parents. And somebody had stole my bag with my laptop in it. And I was like, are you kidding me? And my original chart for my dad of the cars that life can deal was in the bag. And I couldn't find that or my wallet. And it was missing for about maybe 5 months. And I came back in January in the winter, and the bag was in the bushes in the snow.
Oh, wow.
And my laptop was still in the bag, and it was completely ruined. I was like, are you kidding me? So something did not want me to release this album, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to release it anyway. And I had planned on releasing it sooner, but I'll explain that later. So me and my band finally went into the studio about 2018. So my dad passed in April 2016, and I brought my mom with me to New York to hang out for a little while, for about maybe like 2 or 3 months. I didn't want her to be alone. And she got to see me still work on the music and continue to play. And I actually still went on the road right after my dad passed because I had to take care of my mom. So I was like, all right, I can't really hit pause right now. And it was probably good that I didn't hit pause. So music really kept me going. I was on the road with Alan Harris, and I was working for Apple. So it was crazy. I was doing Uber, working for Apple, and I was touring. And Apple, thank you, Apple. Because they hired artists, and they understand the grind. So the grind is real. But anyway, with fast forwarding, I went into the studio at Bunker. It's called The Bunker, and it's in Brooklyn. And I love The Bunker because they have some of the greatest engineers in the world. And I had planned the recording session about 3 or 4 months in advance. That's how popular The Bunker is. So I planned the recording session, the first part. And what's really crazy, my band will vouch for this. They were like, are you insane? You trying to do what? I recorded 2 different bands in one day in less than 6 hours.
Wow.
And I recorded a trio with a different group because I wanted to really utilize the recording studio time because it's not cheap. It's very expensive. And I had to save up, and I had to get, a producer involved to help invest in the project. And on top of financially taking care of my parents, it was like, how am I going to do this, God? But I need to do this, and I need to get this out. So anyway, I had pre-planned about 4 months in advance to go in the studio in February of 2018. And during that time, it would make it, I think, almost 2 years with my dad being gone. And within that second year, me and my partner at the time, we brought my mom up to spend Christmas with us. So that'd be 2017. And my mom started not feeling very well. She already was like exhausted from taking care of my father, but I noticed that it was worse. And so during that time of Christmas before it hit 2018, we had to take her to the hospital, and that's when I discovered my mom had been keeping a secret about having kidney problems. And so by the time I had to go into the studio, I was in Australia, and I got a phone call from my mom, from my siblings, saying that my mom was in ICU.
Oh, wow.
So while I was in Australia playing with Alan Harris at Bird's Basement, it's a really cool spot. And it was already like my second or third time going to Australia to play there. And so what happened was my mother's kidneys and her heart all this stuff was going on, and her diabetes was getting worse. And just losing your husband, put her in ICU for the first time ever. And so I was playing, worried about my mom, had just recently lost my dad, and I was about to go in the studio with my band. And so when I got back from Australia, I couldn't go straight home because I had already planned this recording session. I couldn't reschedule it. So I had to keep talking to my mom every day, and I was talking to everybody at like 5 a.m. because, it's a huge time zone difference.
Yeah.
It was very stressful. And when I finally flew back to New York to record in Brooklyn at Bunker, I did the recording session, and right after the recording session was over, I literally took a nap, got in the car, and drove to North Carolina.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like the whole project is just an exercise in perseverance, to make sure that, you get this thing out. And it was shall I say, a long birthing process for the album. I mean, it's such a great project. It really is. And, I guess the next obvious question is, you want this in as many hands as possible, but, let's assume that the global health pandemic, ends and you're allowed to get out and play some shows. Do you have plans to tour in support of the album, or is it more of a, I put out this record, I'm going to do whatever I can, but I'm not really going to take those musicians on the road?
That's a great question. So my ultimate goal is, yes, to tour the project. Before the album release, I did do a festival called the Pittsburgh Live Festival. I don't know if you heard about it. It's really amazing. And I did a introduction into what the music was going to be about with Sonic Wallpaper, which is the band name. I should mention that.
Sure. Yeah. Great band.
So before COVID hit, I had been talking to Alan Harris, his partner who manages him. She also manages other bands. Her name is Pat Harris. And I had been doing APAP. I don't know if anybody is familiar with APAP, but it's a platform that happens every January. It's basically a showcase. And anybody in the music industry is at this showcase, and you basically pay to be in the showcase. And your showcase may not be any longer than 15 to 30 minutes. And I've done that 3 years now with Sonic Wallpaper, and I did it with another trio ensemble that I was trying to promote. So yes, I've been promoting with the idea of touring with the ensemble. And right now I'm strategically working on how to, because there are a couple of venues that are opening up starting in July in New York.
Okay.
What is it called? I can't think of the name of it right now, but I'm going to be playing there unless something happens and COVID gets worse. But I'm playing there in July with Alan, and so I'm going to start talking to those venues that only allow like 50 people capacity, depending on the size of the room, to try to get Sonic Wallpaper out there. And Jazz Roads has a program where they'll give you grants to tour in areas that don't have as much musical culture. Yeah. So my goal is to find areas, because I want to come to North Carolina and, just be there and grow with my community back there as well. So the goal was to have a Dirty South tour. That's what I was going to call it, where I start from New York, and then as soon as I hit the Mason-Dixon line, just find venues, but smaller venues, not major ones, and bring the music there, because I feel like growing your fan base means that you need to get new people, not the same people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that when you mentioned a sideman earlier, right? But as a drummer, when you release a solo project, it's got your name on it. It is very difficult to get attention. Unless your name is Peter Erskine, Bill Stewart, et cetera.
Right.
Very hard to get attention. And to pay your band to go out on the road, it's almost an insurmountable bar to get over as a drummer. It really is. So my hope is that you get to do that, because people deserve to hear this. They really do. I mean, it's a great, great record. And I hope that we can help you in some small way to get it in the hands of the peeps.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's doing really well on Jazz and they chose one of the tracks called Past Tense to be the track of the week, and that was last week.
Nice.
And it made the Jazz playlist on Spotify. So I created a link, and anybody can go to Jazz's playlist and see the song, and it's amazing. It's amazing because I'm featuring so many different artists. Like I have Stephanie Christian, who's from Detroit, and I met her in North Carolina, like on a one-off, and we've been buddies since. And Charnay Wade, who's an amazing jazz vocalist, is doing spoken word with a dancer who also sings from Urban Bushwomen, which is another a dance company. So, I mean, everybody on the album is also why the album is so, I think, great and powerful, because I feel like I chose the right people to help support me and as Shayna Small would say, be a conduit for me. Corey Wallace, Chris McBride, Nimrod Speaks, like he's my favorite bass player, and then Sandoval is one of the most amazing pianists ever. I mean, like she takes, it's just beautiful, and platforms that you can find it on. It's on every single social media platform, from Spotify to iTunes to it's getting in jazz magazines, and I'm trying to also help it cross over into other radio stations. Like my goal is to have Steve Harvey play one of my songs.
There you go. I mean, it can't hurt. So
right.
Well, excellent. Now, I want to be respectful of your time. And one of our traditions here on the Drum Shuffle is we always ask our guests for a good piece of advice. And, it sounds like, this project, you've gone through a lot of stuff over the past few years. And it's a lot to try to unpack. But I know you've learned a lot. So give us all, as drummers, a good piece of advice that we can carry out in our day-to-day lives.
Wow. I would say that nothing is impossible as long as you make room and time for yourself as well as others, but don't sacrifice yourself to the point to where you have nothing left to give. That is what I would have to say. You have to make sure that you are moving forward no matter what is happening in your life. Do not allow anything to stop you from being a positive example in the community. And the biggest thing I would say is you can't allow fear to interrupt your life, because God gave us a spirit of fear. He gave us a sound mind and a sound body. And it's only through experience that we become afraid of certain things. So don't be afraid of anything. As long as it's something that can be beneficial and help you grow, try every avenue as a musician, as a person, as a human being. At least try something once. Something safe. Don't do anything crazy.
Don't juggle chainsaws. That's not what she's saying here. Yeah, so send all complaints to Shirazette Tinnin, not Jamie Eads. Okay, so If you try something unsafe, it did not come from me. It came from Shirazette. So, Shirazette, one last thing before we let you go. I know that you teach as well. Tell everybody where they can find you. I'm assuming through your website, but let us know where folks can find and follow you on socials.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me. My Instagram is Shirazette Tinnin, and you can reach out to me as you said through my website, which is shirazettetinnin.com. Or if you want to study in a collegiate setting, I do teach applied lessons at New Jersey City University, and they're always looking for great young musicians or old musicians that still want to get a degree. And you can also just email me if you want, shirazettetinnin@gmail. That's cool with me. And because that's what Cindy Blackman did with me. I just called her up and she called me back. So I will pass it on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. People say to me all the time, they will ask, they'll say, man, how did you get Marco Miniman to come on the Drum Shuffle? And I was like, I sent him an email. It's that simple. If you have somebody's email address, you send them an email, they may respond. You never know, right?
Exactly.
So, and the old saying is you're only about 3 phone calls away from anybody on the face of the earth. If you know where to ask, right, you're usually about 3 contacts away from anybody that you want to reach out to. So, everybody reach out to Shirazette. She's a great teacher, great drummer. Shirazette, thank you so much for coming on the Drum Shuffle. We really do appreciate it. And
oh man, thank you. I'm so excited for you having me.
Yeah, for sure. And keep us posted on what's going on. You're welcome here anytime. If the tour does indeed happen, let me know what those dates are, and we'll make sure we share it with our folks and get some folks to come out and say hi in person.
Yeah, most definitely. We gotta talk after this because you're in Kentucky, so I need to bring the band to Kentucky.
Absolutely, I've got some ideas for you. So I appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you real soon.
All right, have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, guys and girls, that's going to wrap up episode 106 of the Drum Shuffle. As always, thank you guys so much for downloading, streaming, and listening to the Drum Shuffle. We simply cannot do this show without each and every one of you doing so each and every week. If you like the show, the biggest thing you can do to help us out, we don't ask for money. We ask you to share a link with a friend. Just tell somebody about the show. It helps us to continue to grow, and we appreciate it more than you will ever possibly imagine. As always, we answer every single email that we get here at the Drum Shuffle. That email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com, and you can always find more information about me over at jamieeads.com. Guys and girls, we have a tremendous list of drummers coming up on future episodes, and you're not going to want to miss it. Just a few of the names of folks that I've interviewed over the summer that you're going to hear from over the next few weeks: Danny Gottlieb, Noah Levy, Michael Bland from Prince and Soul Asylum. Can't wait for you to hear that. Got an interview with the dude, Harry Myrie. Can't wait for you to hear that one either. We've got a lot of great guests coming up, so please hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you use to listen in. It helps us, and again, we have some great content coming up. Again, I hope everybody had a great summer. Thanks for tuning back in. Now that we're back, on our regular weekly schedule, we're going to keep bringing you these interviews. We welcome all suggestions. If you have a suggestion for a guest, drop us an email at thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. And as you'll hear in some upcoming weeks, a listener did reach out and say, hey, here's some guys that I think you should have on the show. And that gentleman ended up on the show himself. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that coming up. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers, everybody.